The heavy rain drummed against the windows of the modest suburban home, creating a symphony of natural percussion that masked the quiet footsteps in the hallway. The air was thick with tension, each breath echoing like a thunderclap in the stillness. In the dimly lit living room, a laptop screen flickered to life, casting an eerie glow on the faces of two people seated close together. The man, tall and broad-shouldered, had his brow furrowed in confusion and concern. His daughter, a petite young woman whose eyes betrayed a mix of fear and determination, pushed the laptop closer to him. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I need you to see this." John Turner's heart pounded in his chest as he glanced at his daughter, Emily, who looked more anxious than he had ever seen her. Her words hung in the air, weighted with unspoken implications. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself before clicking the mouse to open the folder she had already navigated to. Images flashed onto the screen, one after another, each more damning than the last. John's eyes widened as he recognized his wife, Sarah, entangled in intimate embraces with a man he didn't know. His stomach churned, acid rising in his throat. The photos were clear, capturing moments of stolen passion that left no room for doubt. "Where did you get these?" John's voice was a strained whisper, his gaze fixed on the screen but not truly seeing the images. I found them on Mom's phone," Emily replied, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to snoop, but I saw something when she left it unlocked. I couldn't believe it at first, so I checked again, and then I took these." John felt a wave of nausea wash over him. His mind raced, trying to piece together how long this had been going on, why he hadn't noticed anything amiss. He gripped the edge of the laptop, his knuckles turning white. "Do you know who he is?" John asked, his tone colder than he intended. Emily shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't, but Dad, I think we need to talk to her. We need to confront her about this." Before John could respond, the front door creaked open, sending a jolt of adrenaline through him. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, growing louder with each second. Emily shot to her feet, panic etched across her face. "It's Mom," she breathed, her eyes wide with fear. "What do we do?" John's mind scrambled for a plan as the footsteps drew closer. He forced himself to stay calm, to think rationally despite the chaos swirling inside him. He grabbed the laptop, closing it swiftly and sliding it beneath the cushion of the couch just as the living room door swung open. Sarah stood in the doorway, a look of surprise crossing her face as she took in the scene before her. Her eyes flicked between John and Emily, sensing the tension that filled the room. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "Why are you both sitting in the dark?" John struggled to find his voice, his thoughts racing faster than he could process them. He glanced at Emily, who was biting her lip nervously, her eyes pleading for guidance. "We were just talking," John finally managed to say, his tone carefully neutral. "Emily wanted to show me some pictures she took." Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly, clearly not fully convinced by his explanation. She stepped further into the room, her gaze lingering on Emily for a moment before shifting back to John. "Well, it's late," she said, her voice softening. "Maybe we should all get some rest. We can talk more in the morning." John nodded slowly, his mind whirring with conflicting emotions. He needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. As Sarah turned to leave the room, he met Emily's gaze, seeing the same uncertainty reflected in her eyes. "Good night, sweetheart," Sarah called over her shoulder, her voice warm but with an underlying edge of tension. As the door closed behind her, Emily let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling. John reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure this out," he promised, his voice firm. "But right now, we need to be smart about how we handle this." Emily nodded, her grip tightening around her phone, clutching it as if it were a lifeline. The storm outside continued its relentless pounding, mirroring the turmoil within the house. "What do we do now?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. John hesitated, his mind a whirlwind of questions and doubts. He knew they couldn't keep this secret forever, but confronting Sarah tonight was too risky. They needed more evidence, more certainty before they made their move. First, we need to delete those photos from your phone, John instructed, his voice low and urgent. Then, we wait. We watch and listen for any signs. Tomorrow, we'll decide our next step. Emily swallowed hard, her eyes darting toward the hallway where her mother had disappeared. But what if she finds out? What if she knows we have proof? John squeezed her shoulder gently, offering what little comfort he could. She won't, not if we're careful. Trust me, Emily, we'll get through this. As they prepared to part ways for the night, a sense of dread settled over them both. The house remained eerily silent, the only sound the incessant rain outside. John watched as Emily retreated to her room, every step heavy with worry. He lingered in the living room, his thoughts a tangled mess, the weight of what he had seen pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. He needed answers, needed to understand how things had come to this. And as he sat there, alone in the darkness, he couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Tomorrow, he muttered to himself, we'll find out the truth. With that resolve echoing in his mind, John stood up, ready to face whatever lay ahead. But as he moved toward the hallway, a soft sound caught his attention, a faint rustling, almost imperceptible, coming from the direction of the stairs. His heart skipped a beat as he froze, every muscle tense. Someone was there, watching, waiting. A cold shiver ran down his spine, and he knew without a doubt that the game had just begun.